One of the other major parts I need to tackle, apart from the seat, that needs to be recovered and padded, but I don't have a fuel tank for this, and obviously I can't use the original fuel tank off the engine because no, that's not working. So I need to build a fuel tank, which is why I have this substructure here giving me the basic guidelines as to where the tank cover goes. That's literally just a cover. So again, while I was at the engineering supplies, got myself some 1mm zinc plate, and that is going to become a fuel tank. Okay, so this is the base piece that I'm going to use for the main tank. This is going to be, I'll explain all that. It's going to be an outlet here, so to get the most out of it, I want to dimple it so that the pickup or the outlet sits at the lowest possible point. So what I've done on the other side, I've cut myself a piece of pretty thick wall tube just as a guide basically, and I've also grabbed a socket, 13mm impact socket, and the outside diameter here is about 20mm, which is a little bit bigger than what I want, which is what I want. So now what I'm going to do, I need to dimple this. So with the tube, I put it on. That mark there is pretty much the furthest forward I can go on it without hitting something. So I've put that on there, and not only marked it outside, I've marked it inside as well. So then that is pretty much about the right size. So that I can just sit that on there. When it's in the press, I can put that on there and I know I'm in the right spot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a couple of tacks on this to hold it in place, because the last thing you want is moving around. So I'm just going to place that there and put a couple of tacks just to hold it in place. Then we'll stick it in the press. There we go, that's all we need. Now let's chuck it in the press. Okay, I hope I don't get in the way of the camera. But, base plate, I think we can come up a bit. That'll do it. Alright. I'm drawing it down, and I can already tell I'm in the way of the camera. There we go. Let's see what happens. That's plenty. Got about a 5mm depth there. Yeah, it curled up the ends, but I can fix that. I'll just hammer that back down before I take this off. Alright, hammered that out straight. And then I figured out the centre in the socket is just big enough to let the Sharpie through. So, pop that back on there, drop the Sharpie down. There's my centre point. That's where I drill it. And of course, this thread, it's 10mm, but it's fine thread. So finding a nut for that is, well, it's not going to be impossible, but it's going to be more difficult than I care to imagine. So I'm just going to make up a nut to weld on here, which will be about the thickness of the threads, about there, which means that the lowest point is right at the bottom of that filter, which is good. And this is going to lean back as well on the actual bike, which means all the fuel is going to flow to the back. So you saw the substructure I had made up, which kind of gives the internal dimensions of the cover. And basically, because of the design of the cover, there's a key lock there, which I will be using. That's the mounting hole. That was the filler neck point, but it was on a real bad curve, which means it's going to stick up, or it's going to be round, and it's going to be really ugly. So I fiberglassed that up, and I'm going to move it down about here. The whole point here is that it's on the left side, and the pickup, the fuel pickup, is on the right side. So what I've decided was to go for a fat boy style tank setup, and I have two sub tanks. So I'll fill it up on this side, and then it'll flow out of the bottom and into the other one. And as you can see, well, you can't actually at the moment because that's in the way, this tank will actually slope down that way, and the other tank will slope back down the other way, so that I'll always have a full drain down to the lowest point, which is right next to the fuel pickup. So what I do, I created a bridge and then figured out the inside walls and tacked them on, and from there, well, I'm kind of winging it, fitting as I go and trimming as I go and doing whatever I need to do to make it work. Okay, so I made up the bung, just turned it up on the lathe, and fortunately enough, I do have fine metric taps and dies. So guess what? I tapped that out. Now, in the process of making that, I had to turn an arbor, because once I cut it off, I had no way of holding it. Well, I could have held it, but it wouldn't have been great. So I could face off and shorten. So I made up this arbor. That was in the lathe jaw, and then I just screwed that on. There you go. Thankfully, because I did that, I can now use this going through there, and that is going to hold my bung in place while I weld it. Alright, so I've welded up the majority of the tanks, around the bottom and up the sides, and double checked. I've welded in the bung for the outlet and adjusted that so it works fine on the bike and for the tank. And I've ground down the welds mainly for well, not even aesthetic, more aesthetic than cosmetic reasons, because I didn't want any sharp edges, because obviously with metal this thin, you got to use a pretty low setting on a welder. And I actually employed a technique called stitch welding, which means it's not just one constant bead, it's like zap, 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 zap. It's a series of tacks, and sometimes it can end up looking pretty ugly, so you need to grind it down. And using gasless, it creates a lot of porosity in the metal. So there's all these little pinholes, and they could be potentially leaks in the tank. But once I did all that, I hold it up to the light, and oh, there's a little pinhole there Down there, right there. See that? Hang on a sec. I can't see it now, I must have my finger. There it is. See that little spot right in the corner, right in there? There it is. I'll see if I can point an arrow to that. It's a tiny little pinhole there. I'll show you what I mean on the other tank, because I know this has a couple of pinholes. There's one right there. I've cut up the holes so the sun's not shining through and it's not as glary anymore. So this should work. Down in there, there you go. See the light shining through there? That's a pinhole. Need to weld that up. There's a couple more down there. See the light? Of course, the best test of any watertight receptacle is water test. Sorry about the noise, I've got a dryer and a washing machine all going at the same time. Probably not the best time to do this, but no time like the present. Fill that up. Take it outside and look for any drips. Oh, it's dripping. Okay, there appears to be 2 leaks. Maybe 3. So we know it leaks. That's actually a good thing. Okay, tip of the week time. When doing this kind of welding, it's best to have, well, 0 gap. So there was a gap there when I was trying to tack it, so I ended up with a big hole. I can fill that, that's no problem. The point is, better to not have to fill it and have no gaps. Now, you see here there's a gap. You can see that gap right there. I can get my fingernail into that. A little thin skim of metal there. Let's see if we can get that through there. See? There's a hole there. That's going into the hole. Into the gap. The other thing too is if you have a little bit of overhang. See, I'm catching that. See that? There's an overhang there. That's better. Not too much, obviously, but that's good because this metal here will then act as filler. So you're less likely to create a hole. Now, as I said over here, there's a gap there. If I try and weld that like that, I'm just going to open it up and blow it right out. So, little by little, just tap it. Tap it in, try and roll it around. That's not going to close up that easy. So what I'm going to have to do there is just work in from each end and keep tapping it down. There's a little gap there. See that? That is a gap there. So, take your hammer and just tap it down. Sort of roll it round a bit. So I've closed that gap up now. Less likely, a lot less likely that's going to blow out. Let's give it a shot. Now, as I said, with stitch welding, it's quick zap, 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 zap. So that's all I'm going to be doing here. But you see, it's not blowing out. If I try and weld down here, it's okay, I can fill it, but let's just see what happens here. See, it blew out there on the back edge because there's a gap. Now that I've tacked that, close that gap up. And now here, it doesn't open up. Welded up the tanks in general. I cut a hole in the top with a hole saw, the same width as the top of the neck. Now, this piece I cut out of the old tank, and then just because I'm not going to use that anymore, that's pretty much useless. A lot of people are going to say, "Oh, that's sacrilege! You just cut up a fuel tank." Who cares? So I cut that off, rounded it as best I could without going too far down. Then I took a strip of metal and rolled it so that it was the same size as the hole. I've also cut a hole in the cover, which is still over on the bike. Then tank on, take off, tank on, tank off about a dozen times to get the positioning and the length and everything right. I've tacked it in place for now. That's pretty much where it's going to be. I just need to finish welding up both around the top here. Yeah, I know you can't see the join there, but there is a join there. And then around the bottom of the tank here, where it joins the top of the tank, I should say. Tank and cover in place. It looks like a nice fit. We'll just pop the cap on for now. I think that looks pretty good. Obviously the tank's not finished yet. I've still got a bit of sanding and filling and everything to do, but that is pretty much how it's going to work. Well, there's the tank finished. Well, welded anyway. I still need to grind down around here just to make it nice and neat. But apart from that, done. I've even drilled some holes, ready to screw down to the frame.